Going into 2025, I want you to start recognizing your patterns. Everything comes down to a pattern. If you've always gained your weight back, you probably are in a loop of a pattern of always gaining your weight back. This is a question you should audit yourself multiple times a day. Who am I being right now? We are only going to get results with the version of ourselves we are being the majority of the time. So going into 2025, I want you to be obsessed with who you have to become. Most people can't answer this. Well, if you can't answer what it is you want, you're sure as hell are not gonna know the version you have to become to get that. So going into the new year, I want you to really think about who you have to become and become obsessed with that person. Like, get to know that character. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. If you're new around here, welcome to the show. My name is Jared Hamilton, and I'm your host every single week. If you're a returning listener, I appreciate you coming back, so welcome back to the show. Now, in today's episode, I have a really, really cool message for you. I know I say that every single episode, but it's because I think every episode's dope. So this is your 2025 Fat Loss Playbook, because at the time of recording this, it is December 20th. So we are finishing out 2024 real strong, hopefully. And I wanted to give you kind of a playbook to go by for your 2025. Now, if you're new around here and you haven't subscribed to the show, be sure and do that. That's the biggest piece of housekeeping I have for you. But otherwise, let's dive right in. So when it comes to going into the new year, going into 2025, I'm gonna set my notes here. If you're watching the YouTube video and see me looking around, I don't want you to go into the new year without the right frameworks and mindset and headspace, because I personally don't like to speak, in what I would label as hard indefinites. And don't get me wrong, there are some indefinites that I believe in, but what I mean by that is everyone's situation is going to be different. And because of the vast amount of people that listen to this, I want to give you traits to think about and almost principles to go into the new year with. Because obviously, like what most people are going to say is, well, yeah, be in a calorie deficit, eat lots of protein, prioritize plants, strength train 3 to 4 days a week, get your steps up. And that's cool. Like at the end of the day, that all is all fine and dandy. It's all not wrong. But I would think you need more than that, because at the end of the day, yes, if you ate less, moved more, ate more protein, ate more plants, moved more, strength trained, you'd get to where you want to be. So instead of just beating that drum and just hammering that into your head more, if those things aren't happening, well, then instead of just hammering that into your head more, let's actually talk about the other principles that are going to help take those to that next level for you. Because at the end of the day, you can have all the surface level boxes checked, but if you don't address the deeper parts of you, like dieting from the inside out, then your results are going to be short-lived. So I have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things. That's what we're going to get into. I'm a big list maker. I'm a big list fan. So as in, this is your 2025 Fat Loss Playbook. So let's go a little bit deeper. So number 1, right on the top of my list, is going into 2025, I want you to start recognizing your patterns. Because at the end of the day, if you are not consistent, a big reason you may not be consistent, or if you always gain your weight back, or whatever the case may be, is because you it's your pattern. So many people I work with that I see that come to me for coaching, that I chat with inside the collective, or just, to be honest, just go back and forth in the DMs, is everything comes down to a pattern. If you've always gained your weight back, you probably are in a loop of a pattern of always gaining your weight back. Or if you have this pattern of once I start, I can't stop, it's just because it's a pattern that you follow through on. Yes, we need to unpack all the deeper parts to it, but part of the deeper thing for you is getting really aware around your patterns. Most of the issues that you struggle with are very pattern driven. Half of my self-sabotage conversation that I have with people, when that's a thing that gets in the way a lot, is it's all pattern driven. Right? Like I see it all the time. I do good until 30 days and then I fall off. I'm really consistent until the weekends get here. Or I'm do really well until I step on the scale and then I lose motivation and fall off. Or things are chill and then all of a sudden life gets a little bit busy and you pull the perfectionist card, or all or nothing, or what have you. Those are all patterns, right? You're not an all or nothing person. You have a pattern of all or nothing behavior. You're not a binger. You have a pattern of binge eating. You're not an emotional eater. You have a pattern of hiding your emotions with food, but you will never gain power over your patterns until you become aware of them and course correct when you are in the middle of that pattern, right? And this is a whole different conversation for a different time, but we talk about a lot of the things with sabotage is it's really 2 parts. It's what your beliefs and identity are, and then what the patterns are. So if we don't address the pattern side, you're just going to keep falling into it. Or if you think you are your patterns when you're not your patterns are just something you picked up at a different point in time. All or nothing or the perfectionist may have gotten you through college, but that pattern has run its course and it's not going to help you anymore. Or you may have had a pattern of binge eating that you learned when you were a little kid. Maybe you learned on how to handle mom and dad's divorce and you started binge eating. Well, that pattern serves you when you were 8, but it doesn't serve you now. Because this is an analogy that I actually gave to someone today. Think of your patterns as a pair of shoes, right? Your shoes, you probably don't have the same pair of shoes you've always had. You bought the pair of shoes, you wore them until they got worn out and you go, these shoes have run their course. I'm no longer going to wear these because they're causing my feet to hurt and they're giving me blisters. I'm going to throw them away. You don't have to like, oh, I hate everything about walking now, or oh, I hate everything about these shoes. Is you know what? They've ran their course. It's time to throw them away. The shoes served you when you got them, but you wore them out. You used them to their fullest capabilities. Now they continuing are going to cause you problems, right? If you have a completely worn out pair of shoes, there's no support. They cause blisters. They hurt your feet. They're causing you issues. So, which is why you go, these shoes have ran their course. I'm going to throw them away and buy new shoes. We don't think anything of it. That's what your patterns are. Your old patterns, yes, they served you somewhere when you were at a lower self, when you were a kid, when you were in college, whatever. Your patterns served you somewhere. Otherwise, you wouldn't have them as a pattern. It was you probably doing the best you did when you were younger. But just because you had it then doesn't mean you can't get rid of them now. But here's where it gets really sticky. You aren't your patterns. Imagine thinking the shoe analogy. Imagine thinking those shoes are actually part of your feet. You would be like, no, I can't get rid of these. They're who I am. It's part of me. I can't get rid of these shoes. But you don't do that. You go, yeah, these are just shoes. Yeah, I bought them a year ago and they ran their course. I'm going to throw them away because they don't serve me anymore. And you don't think twice about it. Your pattern's in the same way. But it's like, imagine if I said, hey, take your ears off. You would go, no, it's part of me. My ear is part of my head. Right, exactly. So you don't want to just take it off. But if I said, hey, take off your shoes right now, you go, okay, that's weird. And you'd slip them off because you know your shoes aren't part of you. Your shoes are just something you wear. Welcome to patterns. You are not your patterns. The patterns are just a series of behaviors that you learned that don't serve you anymore. So you can take them off. It gets really sticky. And we'll get into this when we talk about your beliefs and identity and all that stuff. But it gets really sticky when you think you are your patterns, when you go, I'm an all or nothing person. Or I'm a perfectionist, or I'm a all in, all out, or oh, once I start, I can't stop. I'm not the kind of person that XYZ. It's not who you are. It's a pattern. In thinking you are your patterns is like thinking your shoes are part of your feet when they're just shoes. They served you before. They don't serve you now because they're worn out. Throw them away, get new ones. Your patterns are the same way. I'm telling you, it's a game changer when you start to realize you aren't your patterns. You are you who happens to be in a cycle of a pattern. So going into 2025, I really want you to get clear on your patterns, start recognizing them so you can course correct and stop being a victim of them. Okay. Hopefully this is helping. Number 2, become obsessed. Kind of, this actually is a beautiful tee into this next one. Become obsessed with the person you have to become. Because I'm going to try to explain this the best way I can. When it comes to results, your results right now are in congruence with the version of yourself you think you are. So like I had someone who said, Jared, well, I'm just an all or nothing person. I go, you think that's the problem? And I mean that with all the love in my heart. And I wasn't trying to be sarcastic. This was in a coaching moment. And I go, they're like, I'm just such an all or nothing person. I go, you think that's the issue? Right? Like imagine a kid in school who just slacks off and doesn't do their best and they get poor grades and they go, oh yeah, I'm just not the kind of person that turns in their homework. I'm just not the kind of person who sits in the front of class. I'm not the kind of person that actually listens to the teacher. But then they complain that they get bad grades and they don't get the football scholarship. Right. So they go, yeah, I'm just not a learner. I'm just not the kind of person that does the whole school thing. Well, yeah. You think that's the problem? That is the problem. If your identity has a limitation attached to it, we have big issues. If you go, I'm just a perfectionist. I'm just a all or nothing person. I'm a binger. I'm not the kind of person that is happy, whatever your thing is. If on the other side of your identity statement is a limitation, we have some big problems because your identity is what you gravitate to all the time. Subconsciously, you're on autopilot, 85, 90% of the day ish. Well, you're on autopilot to what? You're on autopilot to your identity, who you are convinced you are. Here's what's wild. It's not who you actually are. Your identity is who you are convinced you are. This is why a lot of people have so much potential, so much magic in them. But because they believe they're this lower self or they're this limitation, they never actually get to experience and tap into that amazing stuff because they're obsessed around, oh, I'm just a whatever the limitation is. So going into 2025, and by the way, you could be listening to this in 2028 and the premise is still here. Become obsessed with who you have to become. Again, your result and who you are now is an artifact. It's a history lesson. It's in the past, right? Like if my results right now is because of the last couple years of what I've done, right? Or let's say the last year to make numbers easy. So if I want new results, I have to become a new person. It's like, I think I first heard it with Joe Dispenza say it. It was your personality is what creates your personal reality. So it's not how do I lose 30 pounds? How do I become free around food? How do I get really strong? How do I become confident? The question you should ask is, who do I have to become who's confident? Who do I have to become who loses the weight? Who do I have to become who gets strong? Who do I have to become that breaks the chain of events in their family? Who do I have to become to be successful? Whatever the thing is. Because again, if you just think, how do I get, that's a very egoic thing. Again, nothing wrong with like desiring a result because that's the game, but we have to change that perspective and go, no. I'm receiving based on who I'm being. So when you go, I'm just an all or nothing person. Well, of course you're going to get all or nothing behavior and results. I'm just an all or a perfectionist. Well, so of course it makes sense why when things aren't perfect, you sabotage and then you gain your weight back. Makes perfect sense. So who are you being right now? This is a question you should audit yourself multiple times a day. Who am I being right now? Because we are only going to get results with the version of ourselves we are being the majority of the time. This is why people will do like a meditation or a journal session, or they'll go like, okay, I'm going to be this. This is who I am. 10 minutes later, they're back into their old self, sabotaging. This is an ongoing full-time job of auditing and being really aware of who you're being. It's a game changer when you understand this. So going into 2025, I want you to be obsessed with who you have to become. Like really think about that character. I was actually just doing, I was in the middle of some of my own inner work, and one of the things that I'm going to be starting my day with. Did a session just yesterday or the day before around what my highest self is. And I'm like, he is this, and I started listing out character traits of him. You know, he has high levels of equanimity. People trust him. He makes great decisions. He's tapped into whatever it is. Get clear on who he is. And then at the end, it's, well, I am him. There's that version of me out there. So for me to get his results, I have to become him. I have to be him. I have to operate in congruence with him. How is it for you though? So think about what you want going into 2025. Like, don't like death grip your goals, but have an intention of here's roughly what I would like to have, but don't like chase it and death grip it. So what do you want? Like get crystal clear. Don't just like get really, really granular. Like if you say, well, I want to lose 30 pounds, I would go, so you want to lose 30 pounds and look and feel the same? You'd probably go, well, no, I want to lose 30 pounds. Well, I don't understand. Well, I want my clothes to fit better. Well, how do you want them to fit? Well, I guess I'd like to quit binge eating. So what would you like? Right? We don't want to make our goals all the knots, right? It's like, well, I want to not binge. I want to not be guilty. Okay, so what do you actually want? We don't want to live only in the land of anti. Well, but most people can't answer this. Well, if you can't answer what it is you want, you're sure as hell are not going to know the version you have to become to get that and then align all the actions there. So going into the new year, I want you to really think about who do you have to become and become obsessed with that person. Like get to know that character. Because if they have different results, they're going to be pretty different than who you are right now. A lot of patterns are going to have to get let go of. A lot of stories are going to have to die. A lot of ascension is going to have to happen if you want to get really kind of like spiritual about it. You're going to have to change your personality because then your personal reality can start to change. So think about that. What parts of you have to go, but become obsessed with this version that you have to become? Hopefully that gets your brain moving a little bit. Number 3. Going into 2025, I want you to keep improving your relationship with food. right? Like at the end of the day, guys, with this stuff, these are core principles that are going to help you. I'm not going to just sit and say everyone has to calorie track this year, or everyone has to do these kind of things. I want these to be more guiding principles that will help everything. So going into 2025, I want you to really keep improving your relationship with food. Here's what you have to understand. The longer we go in life, the older we get, the more kids come into play, the more grandkids come into play, and the more success you have. The longer you go on in your life, the more food is going to be involved. So if you don't have a fantastic relationship with food, it's going to be pretty rocky. This is why I've never gotten down with the whole like, oh, food is just fuel and nothing else concept, is because it's not true. Saying food is just fuel is very similar to saying your house is just shelter from the storm, whereas that couldn't be further from the truth. You don't put Christmas trees up and blinds in your house and TVs on the wall if your house is just a shelter from the storm. Your home is like your safe space. It's your sanctuary. It's where you raise your kids. It's where you have memories with your grandkids. It's where you have like those quirky little Christmas morning holiday, what do you call it? Not patterns. Wow, words are hard. Why is this escaping me? Ritual. I'm thinking patterns, rituals. You guys know what I'm saying, where it's like what you guys do every year. I don't know why that's escaping me. But it's more than just shelter from the storm. So food is the same way. Food is how we socialize. It's how we celebrate. It's how we connect with others. It's how we entertain people. It's how we entertain ourselves. It's where I'm telling you, one of the greatest times I connect with my wife is at dinner. We go on date night. We go do things. Birthday cake, like the whole 9 yards. So if you don't have a good relationship with food, like, man, all the experiences in your life where food is involved are going to be pretty bad, pretty hard. Like that's every social event, every date night, every birthday cake, every memory with your family, every holiday, every vacation. Man, that's a lot of life experiences that you're just like kicking out the door because no, food is fuel and nothing else. This is why if you don't make it a really big goal to fix your relationship with food, where you're not having all this food noise all the time and where you're not feeling obsessed and guilty and constantly thinking about it and overwhelmed and feeling uncontrolled, that should be one of your biggest goals for 2025. If it's not already, is to heal your relationship with food. If you don't know how to do it, I've got plenty of resources for you. I can't even count how many people I've helped with their relationship with food. And the crazy thing is it's wild what's on the other side of that for you. If you've made it this far in your life, having a horrible relationship with food, I mean, man, it's pretty wild what you could experience on the other side. I mean, we've had clients fix their relationship with food and then like open bakeries. Like we've had so many people fix their relationship with food, and now all of a sudden they have all this mental freedom to actually be present on Christmas morning with their kids because they're not worrying about the cinnamon roll they're about to have. Right? If your relationship with food is bad, like what are you thinking about on date night? Are you connecting with your spouse or partner, or are you like freaking out about the cookie or the burger in front of you and how it's going to make the scale spike tomorrow? I'm telling you, if you don't fix your relationship with food, things get really bad really quickly, and it will eventually take over your life. And I'm not trying to play the fearmonger game or anything like that. I'm telling you, there is another level of freedom for you once you have a fantastic relationship with food. So make that number 3 on your list for 2025 of focuses, is fixing it and healing that. Okay. Next, this is a little bit more strategic. Going into 2025, I think it's really important to have a plan B for bad days. So the reason I say this is a thing that comes out a lot with coaching clients and our collective members and stuff is we talk about what I call the plan B backup, because let's be honest, we cannot plan for everything. It's just the past couple of years. It's funny. They say like when they write history books around the last like 4 years, we've lived like several lifetimes. I think like statistically they say like in a lifetime, you have like one major life event. Well, in the past like 3 or 4 years, we've had several, like in the world of like everything from presidential assassinations to COVID-19 to like all these different things. Like these are like once in a lifetime things. And we've experienced a lot of them, like world shutdown, like the whole 9 yards. And all that to say this is if you do not have a plan B, you're asking to fail. Because this goes against that pattern of that all or nothing behavior that we were talking about. Because if you're like, I'm all in or all out, well, when life throws a little curveball, that means you're out. When a birthday comes up, you're out. I mean, hell, right now we're like, 4 or 5 days, 6 days from Christmas right now. And people are already jumping ship because they're like, oh, I had a family Christmas get together. You know what? I can't be perfect. Fuck it till January. Well, you literally are just programming another pattern for next Christmas or for the next holiday. So if you don't have a plan B for when things go awry or things go astray, you're asking to fall off. So what your plan B should look like is just a backup. What could you do? What's the least amount of habits or actions to keep your head above water? Right? I was chatting with a client one time about this and about the plan B in her life. She was going through some crazy life stuff that just comes up. And so her normal plan was something around like just her normal habits. Like she's tracking calories, hitting her protein, going to the gym 3-4 times a week. What else? She's journaling every day, doing some meditation, she's had all the things and she was doing great. But then when life hit her in the teeth, we were talking about plan B and I said, well, what would be your plan B? And she goes, well, I'm going to go to the gym still like three or four times. I'm going to just do a little bit less workouts. I'm still going to hit my calories. I'm going to still eat this. I'm going to do this and do this. And she listed off like 5 or 6 things. And I go, that sounds like a really decent plan A, but I said, a plan B would be like, I stop when I'm full and journal before I go to bed. A plan B would be like, just to keep your head above water so you don't drown. Because when life is crazy, that's all we can do. A couple controllables and that's it. And if I remember right, when we had this conversation with this client, she said something along the lines of, she's like, well, that just doesn't seem like enough. And I go, exactly. That's the point is you only pull the plan B ripcord when things aren't going very well, or when life is kicking you in the teeth, when like all your kids are sick, or you have double overtime at work, or you're in school in its final season, or it's, everything's going crazy and you can't keep up. That's when you pull the plan B. The plan B isn't about making progress. It's just minimize regress until the storm is over and you can get back to plan A. This is why a really good plan should be adaptable. This is the problem with a lot of these extremist plans where you're following meal plans or low calorie diets or crazy frequencies of stuff like meal frequencies or carb to fat ratios and like weird products, is because it's just not adaptable. If you're on a tightrope, the only other option is die. If you're not perfect on that tightrope, you fall to your death. And that's how a lot of people feel on their weight loss journey. And then Christmas comes in and they fall to their death. Or the husband and you were fighting and then you emotionally ate and then you fell to your death, or all these different things. Whereas a plan B is more like guardrails. It's like, it just keeps me from going into the ditch. Because a plan B is not something you do forever. It's something you do for a very short period of time to keep your head above water. So I think going into 2025, if you do not have a plan B, it'd be a really good time to have one. It's not being cynical. It's not being lazy. It's not sabotaging. It's being practical for when life does what life does. It's why you probably like to have some cash on hand. It's why you like to have an emergency fund. It's with your money. It's why you may like to have insurance. It's because for if the case something comes up, you're covered. It's no different here. Moving on. What time we got? 24. Okay. I'm trying not to make some of these quite as long, but we'll move right along. Next, going into 2025, I want you to start honoring your emotions. Emotions are such a double-edged sword, and a lot of people have a really interesting relationship with their emotions. At the end of the day, going into the new year, I want to make it for everyone where you can actually hold space for what you're feeling. I have so many clients when they reach this point where they're talking about, Jared, I have so much freedom. Jared, I'm so much happier. My relationship is better. I had a client I was literally on the phone with yesterday and she said, Jared, I feel so much inner peace. And I said, do you want to know why? She goes, why? And I said, it's because you started loving the darkest parts of you. Because every person who's ever said, and that's done one of my programs, and they say, Jared, I feel so much freedom. I never thought I could be this happy. I never thought I could have this much peace. And they talk about these like very high levels of elated emotions, or then they start talking about like their relationships just with themselves or even others. And ironically, it has nothing to do with fat loss. It has nothing to do with a new scale low. It has everything to do with loving all parts of you. And because of historically, most people they only love the highlight reel. They only love the happy, the joy, the excitement, the gratitude. But when it comes to fear, worry, doubt, lonely, stress, which let's be honest, most people, that's their baseline emotions, right? Well, if you run from those, that's basically giving your middle finger to those parts of you. Like imagine having a child and when your kid's dog dies and they're upset and you go, mommy's only here for like happy playtime. You've got to take that upset shit somewhere else. but you don't do that because that's what you do to your own inner child when you suppress your emotions, when you emotionally eat, when you numb or use whatever coping mechanism to escape. That's what you're doing. You were literally telling your inner child, yeah, sorry, we're not here for those emotions. Take those somewhere else. Here's some cereal. We don't even fuck with those. I'm only here for happy. Well, imagine how that child would feel. Okay. But then let's throw a different spin on it. What's your child do when mommy is that space that is so much love for everything that comes up? That kid is sad, mom loves and accepts. The kid has a bad day at school, come here, mommy's got you. Well, then that all of a sudden that kid feels unconditional love, and then they're just elated over time with that as a constant, right? It's no different for you, because when you start to honor all of your emotions and realize they're just messengers, this is just a messenger just telling you to alert you about something, and it's just a part of you or a pattern of yours, and you start to just become a space of love for those and accept and allow them to be here, you'll notice your happiness, your ability to be present amplifies. Because here's the other part. When you start to hold space for your negative emotions that you have numbed, it amplifies all your emotions, because numb is numb, right? If like when I had knee surgery a few years ago, I think 2019, 2020, I tore my meniscus in jujitsu. And when I had surgery, I did not feel the doctor cut me open because he numbed my knee. They put anesthesia in it. So I never felt the doctor cut me open, but I wouldn't have felt my wife's hand on my knee either. I wouldn't have felt a massage on my leg, is because numb is numb. So if you numb to fear, lonely, stress, anxiety, depression, sadness, overwhelm, if you feel those and you're like, got to get out, can't have that, well, then you're also inadvertently numbing happiness, joy, gratitude, being present with your kids. Numb is numb. So this is why when you start to, on this number, like on this list, is start honoring and being a space of love for everything that comes up for you and holding space for it, all your emotions amplify. Happy gets happier. Grateful gets even more grateful. Being present with your kids or husband or partner get even more of a greater experience, is because you become the space of love that is allowing all the emotions to be here. I know that sounds airy-fairy. I know that doesn't sound very tactical, but when you do that, it also stops emotional eating. It also stops just suppression as a whole. It stops the issues you have with needing a glass of wine every night. It stops so much bad from happening when you start becoming a space in regulating and honoring your emotions and stop distracting. So going into 2025, let's start doing that. Next, home stretch here, almost done. Next, going into 2025, make inner work just as important as your outer work, because this is the epitome of dieting from the inside out. Is you have to diet from the inside out first before we diet for real. I remember that's how you realize that's how dieting from the inside out, the term came, is I was chatting with a client, someone applying for coaching. Actually, I would say this on almost all like application calls when people want to know like how my process works and explaining this inner work stuff. Some people couldn't wrap their head around it. So I basically said, yeah, we got to basically diet you from the inside out first before we diet you for real. I have to fix all these issues deep down, and then these issues on the surface will stick. You have to make that such like your state of being all the time. Like with my clients, like I don't let them go into a fat loss stage purposefully until we fix the inner game. If they're binge eating emotionally and sabotaging, have all those issues going on, I'm not like, yeah, let's go into a calorie deficit. No, we're not ready for that. So that's why we have to make inner work the priority. So going into 2025, I know January, you're ready to hit the ground running and make fat loss happen for you this time, and you're ready to do all this stuff. But we got to make inner work just as important of your outer work. And even if you're going to like deviate on the guidelines and you're like, no, I want to start on that stuff too, like go ahead and start in the calorie deficit and focus on fat loss, you have to make inner work just as important. Because if you want to have a house that stands, you have to have a rock solid foundation. And if you can't access the deeper, darker parts of you, you're going to sabotage the house. So going into 2025, you need to make inner work just as big of a deal for you as outer work, because you cannot fix the inner game and not have the surface level outer game not get affected. When you start regulating your emotions separately from food, you stop emotional eating, makes fat loss easier. When you start becoming a space of love for anything that comes up for you, you stop running from those emotions with other addictions or what have you, or the other patterns. When you start assessing and auditing and changing your identity and who you have to become, you stop identifying as all or nothing, a people pleaser, all in, all out, and the behaviors now that go with those. You see where I'm going with this? When you start unpacking your childhood or start doing inner child work, all of a sudden the surface level things start to fall away. Like the bad habits that you have or the patterns or the beliefs that you used to have start to fall. Going to therapy, whatever it may be, journaling, meditation, identity work, fixing your relationship with food, all of these things. Do the inner work this year. Go into this year making inner work just as important, if not more important than your outer work. Okay. And then finally, I think this is also the year to stop trying to do everything on your own. This is the year where, and this is not a plug for my programs. I'm saying this is the year where you need to also get involved in a community, get involved with a group of like-minded people who are going to be a springboard for the version that you're trying to become. Now, here's what most people do. Most of you listening to this are in a dozen Facebook groups. Most of you in this are trying to take advice from every single influencer out there. And I want you to let that go. I think it's really important that you cut out the noise and join and lock arms with someone or a community or what have you who is aligned with these things. Again, obviously, like if you're listening to my show, I think my community, the collective, is the best place for that. But I'm not even saying, even if it's not my stuff, you need to be part of something in a group of people that is aligned for you to help get you to where you want to be. Because if you want to go far, you have to go together. This whole lone wolf thing, let's be honest, is an ego trip. Trying to do this on your own and wanting to prove to yourself you can do this on your own is all ego, and it's keeping you stuck. I'll be honest, listening to this and saying, I'm going to do it on my own, isn't doing it on your own. Like you're still the one half. If you're basing it, I don't want to like work with anyone. I want to join a community. I don't want to do whatever because you want to do it on your own. Then that would disqualify listening to this advice as doing it on your own. Because even if you're working with a mentor, even if you're working with a coach, you're in a community, whatever, and following their blueprint, you're the one that still has to do this stuff. You're the one that still has to get out of bed. Even with my clients, even with my highest level clients, I can't control their actions. I'm not the one that shuts their TV off before they go to bed. I'm not the one that drags their ass to the gym. I'm not the one that puts a notebook in front of them to say, do your journaling. I'm not the one that says, hey, I want you to sit in your emotions and forcing them to do it. They still have to do it. So for you, make this the year of actually letting that egoic part of you go of like, maybe you do need to work with someone. Maybe you do need to join a community. Maybe you do need to lock arms with a group of people that are going to help be a springboard into this version of you. Because if you audit your actions right now, is doing it the way you've been doing it working? Is doing it on your own and doing this whole lone wolf thing, or like, I have to prove it to myself? Is that helping you? Because I don't know about you, but like the people I talk to, it actually makes years of suffering happen. Most of my clients, whenever we're doing this work, almost everyone says, man, if I would have found you 20 years ago. Like what would happen if like you would have fixed this 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30, 70 years ago? So again, this is not, this is not a coaching push or anything like that. Again, I don't care if you join my stuff or someone else's. There's so many great resources and people out there. I'd be happy to recommend any if you need help with it. Even if someone ever says, Jared, I want to work with someone, but I don't feel aligned with you. Can you help me find someone? Absolutely. I would much rather help you find the person or the community or the group of people that's going to help get you where you want to be. So make this the year going into 2025 where you're actually going to allow yourself to get the help that you need, because otherwise you're running out of time. Like quite literally. And at the end of the day, the longer we struggle, the stronger the struggle gets. Every fall off is a rep that way. But we know this is just a reps game. Like if this was like guitar, I have to go through a bunch of shitty practice sessions before I actually sound good. But then imagine someone like Jimi Hendrix, who is just like this all-star at playing guitar because he's done it for years. But a lot of you guys have a lot of reps and are really good at falling off, are really good at sabotaging, are really good at gaining weight. It's because you have more reps that way. So every time you establish more reps in that direction, you're encouraging that version of yourself. The only way to get out of it is going through it the other way. This is why most people sabotage and fail, is because they can't get on the other side of this pattern, which goes back to square one. So to recap, your 2025 playbook, as in don't go into the new year without this list. Number 1, start recognizing patterns, your patterns. Number 2, start becoming obsessed with who you have to become. Number 3, keep improving your relationship with food. Number 4, have a plan B for bad days. Number 5, honor your emotions. Number 6, make inner work just as important as your outer work. And number 6, join the right kind of community for help and support. Now, that is it. Go into 2025 with that list, and you'll literally make this the best year you've ever had. And it won't be just something you say like, oh, new year, new me, because you say that every year. This is actually going to happen for you if you actually lean in and do that work and actually change things. Now, if there's any way I can help or support, if you want to see about the possibility of getting involved in one of my programs in the collective, or see if there's spots open in one-on-one, whatever, I'm here for you. I'm happy to answer questions, or I'm happy to help you find the right people for you if that's something that you struggle with or need help with. Otherwise, be sure to check out the description for all the goodies I have down there for you. I have my 20-pound blueprint, which is my step-by-step guide to losing your next 20 pounds. I have my fat loss checklist, which is a 5-day course on everything you need to know about sustainable fat loss and losing weight and keeping it off for good. I have all my wait lists down there for the book. If you want to join the collective, or if you want to get on the wait list for one-on-one coaching. And then I have all the other links down there that you'll need. Otherwise, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. I love you, and I cannot wait to see you in the new year. I'll talk to you soon.